What is up, people of YouTube? I'm your host Vernon. This is Floyd Lamb Park. Let's fish that. Alright, so back in South Africa, I learned how to carp fish, I learned how to catch catfish, and even trying for something like tilapia using small hooks and worms. But that's how I learned fishing as a small child. I quite recently started doing some bass fishing. What you guys need to understand, in South Africa, bass fishing is quite expensive. A normal $1 lure here at Walmart, if you take into account stuff like import tax, VAT, exchange rate, inflation, that $1 lure here would cost something like $5 to $6 back in South Africa. So it is quite expensive to do bass fishing. I did start out using crankbaits and jigging baits. That's how I started bass fishing in South Africa. But there is a lot of different types of lures and stuff to use to try and catch bass. This video is going to be about me exploring some new lures, as there are quite a few that I have never actually caught a bass on before, and I want to start using these lures, learn how they work, and try and catch a bass. So if all goes well, I will catch some bass here today at Floyd Lamb Park. If not, I need you guys to tell me what it is that I'm doing wrong. Having a very big selection of baits that I can use, it can be quite challenging looking at your tackle box, not knowing which one to select. So for that reason, I'm only going to use 2 baits today, and let's quickly have a look at them. Okay, so rather than sticking to one single spot and try and fishing this spot till I find some fish, the mission for today is going to be to go around the ponds, move around quite a lot, cover as much water as I can to try and find the one fish that will be willing to go for my lure. Now on my setup here today, I have a little Z-Man chatterbait. On my little Z-Man chatterbait, I got a little double paddle tail grub on here, running low on some supplies, so I don't have little kite ticks and stuff that I can put on there, but this should work pretty well. The thing is, the white color is actually more for going fishing at Lake Mead, but it should technically still work in these waters. You can find fish that will go for the white ones. There are no shad in here, so the bait fish tend to not be white. But fish will still react to this little lure. Ideally you would want something like a bluegill pattern or something like that, so the white one may reduce my chances, but that is why I'm going to try and cover as much water as possible, because somewhere in these ponds there will be a fish that is willing to go for my baits today. My problem is I have to locate that fish. That's why I have this little chatterbait to cover as much water as possible to try and find that fish. So as I'm throwing out the chatterbait, using my polarized glasses, I sometimes can see some fish swimming towards it or slamming it, not committing to the bait that's moving. For that reason, the second setup that I'm going to be using is quite simple. A little wacky rigged little yum dinger at this point. The idea being, you throw it out there, it falls slowly through the water, you lift it up, seeing if we can get any of the bass to react on that. This is also a great bait to use when you have cover and structure where I cannot throw the chatterbait, dropping this in there, seeing if the fish will be willing to go for that. Now these 2 baits are killer ways of catching bass. Seeing how, as I am not that familiar with catching bass, I'm going to test out these things today. Let's see if we can get some fish. So one thing I need to point out that I have noticed, back in South Africa we learned that while catching carp, you don't need to rip your rod, you just kind of need to lift it and it's enough pressure to set the hook. The reason being, you don't want to rip or tear the hook out of the fish's mouth, whereas with the bass fishing, because you are sometimes using like a Texas style rig where you have it rigged weedless, you sometimes have to rip your rod to get the hook exposed to hook the fish. Now this is something I've been struggling quite a lot with as I'm not used to doing it, meaning that a lot of my fish actually tend to get away because they're not hooked properly. This is still something that I need to work on. Alright, so let's get started by throwing a little chatterbait. I'm going to start on one side, work my way all the way to the other, cover all the water, then move to the next spot, unless I see some pretty good structures or fish swimming around that I want to target with the other rod. Okay, so I have now covered 2 of the 4 ponds here at Floyd Lamb Park using the 2 little baits. I'm going to switch it up a bit now, swap into a bigger profile worm to see if perhaps something bigger with a lot more flair in it. This one has little sparkles in, if something like that would work. The spot I have here, we have a submerged tree. That's why I'm going to throw this out there. Having a tree in the water should be a great place to find some bass. Alright guys, 4 ponds later, 4 hours later, haven't had any bites from any bass. Had a few hits from bluegill on the little worm imitation thing, but they were too small to get to the hook, stuff like that. Switching over quickly to my trusty old little spinnerbaits. Quickly want to see if I can catch at least some kind of fish, even if it is a small bass, rather than completely getting skunked for today. Alright guys, it's taken 4.5 hours, but finally I'm on the board with a tiny little largemouth bass. Let's quickly get this guy back into the water. Not as big as the ones I wanted to catch, but at least we have something for today. Let's release him. And off he goes. Okay guys, so it took me 4 hours to basically cast basically an hour in each of the ponds, walking completely around the pond, casting everywhere. Like I mentioned, didn't have any bites on the chatterbait. Had a few nibbles from some bluegills on the wacky rigged worm. However, wasn't able to catch any fish like that. Now, this is quite confusing, as lots of YouTube channels show you how easy it is. You just put on the lure, you just cast it out there, and you will catch fish, guaranteed. Well, my experience in this is that it is not true. It is not that simple, it is not that easy. It might be that Floyd Lamb Park is overfished. We have lots of fishermen, probably 10 a day, trying to catch some bass. Every time you hook a bass, that fish learns not to go for a lure like that, so that might have an impact. But when looking at fish brain, you can quite see that people do quite regularly catch the big fish from these ponds using the same basic baits. They may have different ways of fishing them. Like I said, this is something I still kind of need to learn. I don't know how to retrieve the things in a different manner from just straight retrieving or hopping and stuff like that. I still need to learn a lot about that. But these small little fish, you can catch them using small little lures. I used a little inline spinner to catch them. They pretty much go for anything that moves. As they get older and bigger and get caught, they learn to no longer do this, and they get a bit more tricky to catch. But there's still lots of time left for today. I am, however, running out of battery power for my little GoPro. If I catch any other fish, I am still going to do some pond hopping and still try. If I do catch any fish, I will either show you the footage or show you some videos after this. However, I don't think I'm going to show you guys the entire time that I'm out here. If I catch something, I will show you. Otherwise, if not, at least we had that one small little bass. Alright guys, so please do tell me, do you also struggle to catch some bass in these ponds, or do you find it easy? Is there something I'm missing? Is there something I'm doing wrong? If you do have any ideas, please do let me know down in the comments. You can also ask any questions down in the comments. If this is the first video of mine you're seeing, feel free to check out my channel, see what other videos I have, and please do hit the little subscribe button, joining my community. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.